South Africa is due to take over the chairmanship of the APRM as well as the African Union. This year's African Union theme is silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for development. South Africa's work is clearly cut out.
I know our president is quite worried, for instance, about conflict in parts of Africa that has been extended. You know, we've witnessed this for an extended time, and in some cases, Africa not playing its role and so on. So those are some of the matters that we will put high on our agenda to make sure that we give support to our president as chair of the AU.
The APRM currently has 38 members. 2 more are expected to sign up during the summit. Africa has set itself a 2023 goal to have all 55 member states accede to the mechanism.
We will also not just add numbers, but we will encourage consistent reports. That assessment reports must generally and regularly be produced just to measure progress, just to ensure that all of us are online.
We think that it's important that the countries that join are ready to do so, because APRM comes with obligations. You must subject yourself to reviews, you must open your doors, you must do certain things that you don't do under the African Union.
Africa is still far off its goal of achieving a conflict-free continent, but all is not lost.
I think we make the observation that on the one hand, the continent is doing, you could say, comparatively better on issues of economic governance and corporate governance, so how the private sector is governing its affairs. But that we need to do more, and perhaps even better, in areas of political governance, democracy, and issues of human rights.
The ministers will present their report and recommendations on the APRM to the heads of state and governments on Saturday. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All right, this is indeed a very important summit, the 33rd Ordinary Session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union. But there's a very important theme as well that will be coursing through the summit. It is the Union's theme for 2020, silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development. What does this mean? Let's get Sophie Mokoena, who's live for us in Addis Ababa. She's our foreign editor. Sophie, a very good morning to you.
Thank you, Blaine. We indeed are coming live from the AU headquarters here in Addis Ababa, where we expect the AU summit heads of state and government meeting to commence from tomorrow. We know that South Africa will take over as the chair of the AU, and yesterday we are told that ministers of foreign affairs have agreed on the agenda for this summit. We know that the main issue on the continent is how do you silence the guns in 2020. We know we still have lots of conflicts on the continent. Earlier on, I spoke to the Minister of International Relations, Minister Naledi Pandor. Will bring you that interview much later, where she indicated that they would want to ensure that this dream does happen. It becomes a reality where we don't have conflicts on the continent. But we have with us the Minister of Defense in South Africa, Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, the minister who is always on the road, flying from different parts of the continent, because South Africa has got lots of contingency of the peacekeeping in different parts of the continent, particularly in the Great Lakes region. Minister, thank you for your time. Silencing the guns, I'm told that the ministers of foreign affairs have agreed that this will be high on the agenda, in line with the Agenda 2063 to silence the guns in 2020. Are we going to meet that target?
Let me start by saying, Sophie, really yesterday as the South African delegation, we were humbled by the fact that all the speakers who took the floor on the matter of an possibility of an extraordinary summit on silencing of the guns to be held in South Africa, which was a proposal which was made by Peace and Security Commission. Everybody supported and commended South Africa for agreeing to host that kind of summit. I think it's important for us, because what that means is that there's a lot of responsibility in our hands, a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of the Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of South Africa. There is hope that South Africa will strive and will work towards the resolution of the many conflicts in the continent. Literally speaking, there is no way in which we'll be able to silence the guns in 2020. But what is important is for all the countries, particularly those areas where there is conflict, to work towards resolving issues which are the drivers of conflict, which in our view are issues of governance, issues of elections, issues of climate change, which are causing people to fight over land, issues of poverty, inequality, injustices. So if we talk about dealing and addressing some of those in the countries where we are, we may actually be 99% towards resolving conflict in our continent.
When you talk about these conflicts on the continent, Sudan comes to mind. Yes, you have the interim government there led by the military. Are we making progress in Sudan? We saw reports that in other areas such as Darfur, there are skirmishes.
Well, the people of Sudan should work speedily to move towards a government, a legitimate government elected by the people, to have a transitional arrangement, which of course is going to include the military, is never a solution to any problem. Military will always be identified sometimes as a stabilizing force, but also a force that can cause instability in a country. So the sooner the transitional government of Sudan calls for an election, the better. And I think that the people of Sudan have learned a lot from the processes where people were in the streets demonstrating. Therefore, they do have the pulse. They do understand. They have their hand in the pulse. They do understand what the challenges of the country are. But we are happy to see that even here, they are represented by members of the transitional government, which is very good because they are not isolating themselves from the AU processes. It's going to be very important for South Africa to work closely and keep a close watch to what is happening in Sudan, because whatever happens in Sudan, if it continues at the time when we are still trying to resolve issues of South Sudan, at a time when Sudan itself, within itself, in the areas of Darfur where there's been instability, they will not be able to resolve those issues unless they work closely with the African Union.
South Sudan, are we making headway?
I think we're making a headway. There's a deadline for the formation of the government of national unity. And of course, as South Africa, we would like to see the parties in South Sudan working together, not just working together for the sake of resolving the conflict, but working together to make sure that the people of South Sudan can benefit from the God-given minerals which they have in that country. South Sudan, right now, there's a lot of inequality. There is poverty. And the only way in which you can do away with poverty and inequality is to really resolve the issues they are fighting.
Libya, it looks like it's a difficult one. We see the meetings taking place outside the continent while we're talking about African solution to the African problem.
I believe that people in the African continent have the potential to resolve their own problems. I'm not saying other initiatives which are running parallel to what the African continent is doing should not continue. They should. But I really believe that Africans can resolve their own African problems. Secondly, one of the key issues which we need to emphasize is the importance of those who are interested in funding programs which are meant to resolve conflict, to channel those resources through the African Union. So you don't have resources which go directly to regions or countries concerned, but you have resources which are channeled properly through the African Union so that the Peace and Security Commission, at every minute, they know what is happening in the continent, how those resources are being spent, and how those peace resolution and conflict situations are being attended to. Lastly, as South Africa, obviously would want to emphasize the importance of women to be at the center of peace resolution of conflict. peace and resolution of conflict and peace and reconstruction of their countries. We want that. And it's a matter that we will emphasize women and peace. Very critical, because women are enablers.
You're talking about women. Lesotho, there are challenges right now.
Let's not prejudge the issue. Let's see what happens. But obviously justice must take its course. If the people who are suspected of having committed this kind of crime, which is a heinous crime, they must take responsibility. And I think we should commend the person, the suspect, for handing herself over so that she can prove her innocent.
But the security of the witnesses are saying SADC is failing them. SADC is not giving them protection.
I think people tend to really push everything to the region. If there are witnesses for this kind of case, then the country must take responsibility in protecting those witnesses. I don't think that for everything, the country must take responsibility, the government of Lesotho must take responsibility. It can't be for every small matter, you then push it to the region to take responsibility for. I mean, the region is involved in trying to resolve big issues there. We have a mediator in the form of the President of the Republic of South Africa, who has delegated that to Judge Moseneke, and that's our main area of focus. This one, yes, it is a matter of concern, but the government of Lesotho equally must take responsibility. This is not a political matter. It is purely criminality. Murdering a person is criminality, and the whole region is not going to be focusing on a case here crime, but rather on the political matters which are facing challenges which are facing Lesotho.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time.
Thank you.
That was the Minister of Defense, Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, talking to us about issues that are related to peace and security on the continent. We know that we still have pockets of conflict around the continent. The leaders are saying it's time we silence the guns. Over to you, Herman, in Johannesburg.
Yeah, Ms. Mokoena, thank you very much indeed. Look, as we've been reporting, expectations are very high as for many quarters as South Africa takes over the reins at the African Union, the business sector as well. Women are looking to get a sizable share of business opportunities. When you look at the human rights issues, human rights groups are hoping that more pressure is put on certain governments to address people's rights being violated. And many people are looking at President Cyril Ramaphosa to push for greater peace and security on the continent. We shall see. Sophie Mokoena live for us in Addis Ababa. Thank you very much indeed. We'll try to get back to her in a short